Freedom of speech. It's the foundation of a free society. But in today's world, it's under attack from every angle. Government censorship, corporate suppression, and even social pressure. Some argue that free speech should have limits, that we need to protect people from so-called dangerous or offensive ideas. But what if I told you that absolute free speech, yes, complete and unrestricted free speech, is not only the best policy, but the only policy compatible with a truly free society? In this video, we'll break down why absolute free speech is essential and debunk the most common arguments against it. The principle of free speech is simple. Every individual has the right to express their thoughts, no matter how controversial, offensive, or unpopular they may be. The idea isn't just about letting people talk, it's about fostering debate, discovering truth, and keeping power in check. History has shown that societies with robust free speech thrive. Thinkers like John Stuart Mill argued that even false ideas have value because they challenge existing beliefs, forcing us to think critically and refine our understanding of the truth. But here's the key, free speech only works if it's absolute. The moment you allow the government to determine what speech is acceptable, you set a dangerous precedent. Because today's quote-unquote reasonable restriction is tomorrow's excuse for silencing dissent. The biggest problem with restricting speech is that it never stops at just the so-called bad speech. History proves that when authorities gain the power to censor, they always expand that power. Take the Weimar Republic. In the 1920s, Germany had strict anti-speech laws, but when the Nazis took over, they used those same laws to silence their political enemies. Censorship always backfires. Even today, we see this pattern repeating. Governments use quote-unquote disinformation laws to suppress political opposition. Social media companies ban individuals for vague violations of policy, and universities disinvite speakers because their views are deemed offensive. Once censorship begins, it escalates because every ruling class wants to silence those who challenge their authority. Of course, some argue that absolute free speech is dangerous. Let's address the most common objections. Objection 1. Free speech allows hate speech. Hate speech is a subjective term. What one group considers hate speech, another may see as political dissent. The best way to fight hateful ideas isn't to ban them, it's to expose them, challenge them, and defeat them with better arguments. When speech is forced underground, it doesn't disappear, it festers and grows unchecked. Objection 2. Free speech leads to misinformation. Censorship doesn't eliminate misinformation, it just gives the government the exclusive right to define what is quote-unquote true. The best way to combat falsehoods is through open debate. In a free marketplace of ideas, the truth has a fighting chance. Objection 3. Free speech incites violence. In a libertarian society, no authority, government or otherwise, has the power to determine what speech is too quote-unquote dangerous to be allowed. The responsibility for handling speech that encourages violence falls on individuals and communities, not bureaucrats. If somebody calls for violence, it is up to the people affected to hold them accountable through voluntary means, boycotts, refusal to associate, or counter-speech. The alternative is empowering a governing body to determine what speech is quote-unquote too dangerous, an approach that always leads to suppression of dissent. True freedom means trusting people to reject bad ideas without coercion. Some say that censorship isn't an issue if private companies do it instead of the government, but in today's world, corporations hold just as much, if not more, power over speech as governments do. Social media giants have become the modern public square. When they deplatform individuals for their beliefs, it has the same chilling effect as government censorship, and when governments pressure these companies to silence dissenting voices, the distinction between state and corporate censorship becomes meaningless. The solution? Decentralization and competition. Instead of giving a handful of corporations control over speech, we must support alternative platforms and decentralized networks that protect free expression. At the end of the day, absolute free speech isn't about protecting controversial voices, it's about protecting your voice. Once a system of censorship exists, it's only a matter of time before it's used against you. History shows that today's quote-unquote protected class can become tomorrow's target. The only way to guarantee your right to speak freely is to defend the rights of others, even those you disagree with. Absolute free speech forces bad ideas into the open, where they can be debated and defeated. It allows societies to adapt, grow, and challenge oppressive systems, and most importantly, it ensures that power remains in the hands of individuals, not governments or corporations. So what can we do? First, stand up for free speech, no matter who is being silenced. Support alternative platforms, push back against censorship, and never be afraid to speak your mind. Because the moment we accept limits on free speech, we give up our most fundamental freedom. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it. Let's keep the conversation going, because a free society depends on it.